The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
The Lakers lose a controversy-filled Game 4.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast.
A lot of layers to this onion that we're going to be peeling back, some of which involve ultimately credit for the Timberwolves, who've been a very good team.
Things.
You and I said before the series began, they're very good. Some of the layers we're going to peel back reveal just a really crappy tasting onion. Like an onion that has been moldy and rotten and needed to get tossed.
Not one of those delicious bloomin' onions you might get from the restaurant.
Oh, nope. Well, if it's a restaurant, it's got an F in its window because it's not monitoring the stuff in the fridge and in the dry storage area. But one of the things I will say, though, regarding the close of these games with Minnesota versus the Lakers, and it's something that I'll be honest, I did not consider as much heading into this series just because the Lakers had been playing very well heading into the playoffs. And LeBron and Luka are, if you had to draft among the league, two guys, if you had to draft two guys that you would want to close out important games, I'm not saying LeBron and Luka would be number one and number two, but they would get picked early. The Wolves, even with the new addition of Julius Randle this season, just from their continuity for the last couple of years, Ant being around a couple of years, Chris Finch being around a couple of years, they are clearly in better synergy down the stretch of games from having spent, if nothing else, more time together. Even if you think the talent favors them, so does the time. And that is something I will admit I did not consider as much heading into this series that I think we are starting to see as a pattern over the course of this series.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about that. And you look at, and there are a lot of reasons for it. You can talk about players, you can talk about coaching, and all of these things are relevant. And you look at it, the Lakers had a 10-point lead going into the fourth quarter. They had they lost the lead, but then, they pushed it back up. I'm just kind of bouncing around this. They were up by 6 with 7:27 left. They were up by 5 with 5:06 left. They lost the lead and got back up by 2 a couple times. They kept fighting. And the thing that is going to be the dominant question from this game, without question, is JJ Redick's decision to play his starting lineup the entire second half. And his starting lineup for the third quarter for the second half. He did not make any subs. He swapped out Dorian Finney-Smith into that third quarter starting lineup for Jackson Hayes, who may not be allowed in the building in Game 5.
Even when Jax was starting to have a good game and his opening minutes in the first quarter, I mean, I know it's a bar that is below ground to clear, but they were like his best minutes. Yeah, there's his best minutes of the series. Then he picked up a foul and attack, and it's like, all right, we're done.
Yeah.
We're done.
It's who is it? The Godfather. You're not gonna see him anymore.
Paulie.
Yeah,
Paulie.
Yeah, Paulie.
He sold out the old man.
Yeah, you're not gonna see him anymore. So
he left the gun and took the cannolis.
They're not even giving him cannolis. I think nobody was upset with that choice. But there's no question. This is the first time since people started keeping track of these things that a team did not make a single substitution in the second half of a playoff game. The flip side of this, and I do think it's worth discussing and worth noting, is while Minnesota did make some substitutions in that second half, Anthony Edwards, I don't believe, came out of the game. And Julius Randle played about 96% of the second half. So they had guys who, their primary players were
you are
out.
Correct on both counts.
Yeah. Who played, big minutes just like the Lakers players did.
But not nearly as big. Not even
No.
close.
And, look, I mean, Luka played 46 minutes in this game. And LeBron was at, I just moved off the box score to look at the game cast. LeBron was at 46. So, those guys sat for 2 minutes in the first half. You want to start on this? Like, what good move, bad move? Like, I can tell by social media reaction. I think I'm the only person who's okay with this.
I didn't like it in the moment, and I actually tweeted out. There's a couple reasons I didn't like it. First of all, I think it was a bit of an extreme reaction to being up, and the idea of having multiple days to rest afterwards. The Lakers don't play game 5 until Wednesday. So I think it was leaning too much into that rest opportunity and not enough into the realities of the particular game. I think especially with the Lakers having a lead, you could have put in Jordan Goodwin, Gabe Vincent, Jared Vanderbilt for at least a few minutes of the top of the fourth quarter or the end of the third, just to get some guys some rest. But also,
I wouldn't have done anything in the third quarter.
Maybe not in the third quarter, but definitely the fourth. Definitely the fourth. Here's the biggest thing, though, and I called this out in real time, that I did not like about doing this. Once you start getting to like the 7 or 6 minute mark of the fourth quarter, you're pot committed, because you can't just basically spell out in neon skywriting, I don't trust anybody else on this team. And then after sitting guys for 18 minutes, say, I need you to go in, guys I don't trust.
Yeah.
And I think that was the biggest problem I had with this, is you end up pot committed with no outs. If you end up going to overtime, there's a chance that one of those 5 could die. I mean, it just,
you're right.
I understand why JJ did it and what he was thinking. I think it was too extreme of an approach that did not allow you nearly enough outs to manage the rest of the game.
What I am still thinking about, and probably I'll rewatch some stuff and probably spend more time thinking about it, whatever. It's pretty clear when he did make a substitution in the third quarter, this probably was going to go through to the fourth. And I think some of it was, Redick said it after the game, it was not necessarily the plan. They didn't go into the second half saying, tell us, like, this was them saying, like, we have extra timeouts. You could tell they were holding on to timeouts to be able to have that, near the end of the third. I think they had 4. And some stuff happened in this game that was challenging. It kind of didn't go their way for that. I think it was pretty clear that those guys weren't going to come out. And if they did, they were going to come out for such a short period of time that I don't ultimately know if it would have made a difference.
Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Halo as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. No, seriously, pair a controller or 4 to the Fire TV 4K stick and play your favorite Xbox games anywhere. If you're a hardened gamer and want to have your PlayStation, Nintendo Switch, and Xbox too, then this is for you. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On. All one word, Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, Fire TV Cube 3rd generation.
The Knicks pull out another nail biter, 94-93 over the Pistons.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast.
The Knicks 94-93 beat the Pistons. I was not the most confident that they were going to pull this one out for a minute there. Detroit kind of seemed to find their second win in the second half. They were down by, I think, as much as 16 in the first half, and managed to come back and take a double-digit lead over the Knicks in the third into the fourth quarter. Jalen Brunson gets tackled by Dennis Schroeder. Not a foul, by the way, but, just gets tackled. That was pretty much allowed for most of the game, and falls on his ankle oddly, or maybe his knee. I'm still not sure which it was. They were saying ankle on the broadcast, but he came out with a big knee brace on, and that seemed like that was what he was grabbing at, was his right knee more so than his right ankle. But either way, he gets back in the game, goes bonkers to end this one, ends with in the fourth quarter, 15 points on 7 of 11 shooting. Just an absolute masterclass from him down the stretch. Just completely put the team on his back. Karl Anthony Towns, 8 points, including 2 just nonsensical shots to put the Knicks to bring the Knicks even and then take them ahead in this game. Just a magical ending to this one. Maybe not so magical for Detroit fans who are, I think, are maybe a little upset about how things ultimately ended with a no call on Tim Hardaway Jr. to end the game.
Yeah, I was screaming the whole last 2 minutes. I scared my dog. I scared my neighbors. I scared my girlfriend. It was all worth it, because today was the day Karl Anthony Towns became a Knick. Today was the day Jalen Brunson reminded everyone who he is. And most importantly, the New York Knicks reminded JB Bickerstaff who they are, as he said in a mic'd up in the second quarter, I believe. He said, "We know who they are. They're not doing," and that was a quote. The rest of this is a paraphrase. Like, they're not doing anything special. Like, we are hurting ourselves. And the implication there was obvious. These are a bunch of pansies. I want to use a different word, but I can't. And if we just play our game, we're going to beat them and we're going to embarrass them. And you know what? He was right for about 2 quarters, because the Knicks played about as bad as they could have after a fantastic start where they didn't maybe stretch the lead out as much as they could. And then in the fourth quarter, JB Bickerstaff said, "We know who they are." You know who they are now. They're Jalen Brunson. They're Karl Anthony Towns. They're 2 of probably the 5 best shot makers on planet Earth. Just a ridiculous display down the stretch of this game. Josh Hart, look, me more than you, man, but I've argued for him to play less. This was a game where, look, Detroit at times made it painful for the Knicks to have him on the floor. He made it worth it for the Knicks with his rebounding, with his defense, the strip off Cade on the second to last possession of this game. He was extraordinary. And you know what? JB Bickerstaff roasting the Knicks. Shout out to you, buddy, for using your challenge on a loose ball in the first quarter. That was wrong, by the way. The Knicks win the challenge to get the ball back. They make a shot there in a game they ultimately win by 1 point. And then you can't use your challenge on what probably was a foul by Josh Hart, at least by regular season standards, closing out to Tim Hardaway in the final seconds. Alex, you're going to make the argument. I would probably agree with that argument. The way this game was called, you can't call a foul in that situation, because it would be utterly inconsistent with the football game, maybe more so the MMA cage match that was going on the Pistons side throughout. But you know what, JB Bickerstaff, walk out on the court, complain all you want. Cade Cunningham going to be an awesome player. At least in these big moments, he is not Jalen Brunson yet. And frankly, he's not Karl Anthony Towns yet, who with that, again, bad possessions, but just shot clock winding down, baseline fadeaway falling out of bounds, 28-foot three, 2 of the gutsiest, 2 of the best shots, given the timing in the game I have ever seen a Knick make. And Kat, like, congratulations, buddy. You're a Knick for life after that.
Yeah, I'll just get the foul take out of the way early here and just get it done with. But I mean, in my opinion, I don't think you can. And look, it would be painful, but I would have to admit this the same way if the same thing had happened to the Knicks. But like, you can't be okay with how the game is called for most of it and be like, this is Detroit basketball. Like, this is how we play. This is what we do. We're tough. We punch people in the face all game and we get away with it because we're the bad boys, whatever. And then be like, oh, but he touched me a little bit. Like, that's a foul. Like, no, that's just not that. I'm sorry. It was consistent officiating. So like, you either want there to be no rules or you want there to be rules. And it seemed obvious that Detroit was okay with there being no rules. I mean, if they did a full 48-minute report for this game, it would be 300 pages long to go through all the things that should have been fouls that weren't fouls, because they swallowed their whistles, especially in the second half. Like, it was just It was like football. I mean, it was just guys were going inside, cradling the ball, and you could see, I mean, this is on both sides at different points of the game, but you could see like guys ripping at their arms, like pulling their arms away from the ball and not getting called for fouls. It's like, so okay, you're okay with that, but you're not okay with Tim Hardaway selling contact late in the game and not getting a foul call. Like, so I'm sorry, the team that's been, chanting "F you Brunson" because he allegedly foul baits all the time is now going to cry.
By the way, two free throws this game for Jalen Brunson.
So. Right, exactly. Who didn't bait contact like at all in this game, and also didn't get any calls in this game, and still managed to drop 32 on your sorry franchise. But you're gonna have fans in the front row heckling him and going like this, and chucking their head back and everything, and then you're gonna cry a river about this. Like, okay, well, it's sad. Sorry, you guys aren't going to see a win on your home court in the playoffs for 20 years. But unfortunately, I think this one's probably over, because I feel pretty confident that if the refs weren't calling it tight, they're probably going to call it tight now, because the Pistons fans also felt the need to pout them with garbage and make sure that they needed a police escort off of the floor on their way out of here. Stay classy, Detroit. You get everything you deserve in this series. Anyway, that one was for all the Detroit fans that will be in our YouTube comments. Oh wait, they won't, because they're front runners and they only come in when they're winning. Anyway,
we've gotten some nice comments. I want to say thank you to the people who posted nice comments.
There have been some nice comments. There have also been plenty where they only show up, after game 2 when they win the game, and then we haven't heard from them since. So, have fun with that. Anyway, that's to take nothing away from the fact that the Knicks players, I mean, in spite of Tibbs, if I'm being completely honest, came through and won this game, because I think that Tibbs, once things loosened up foul call wise in the second half, I think he was too slow to adjust. He didn't have help coming into the backcourt to get the ball over the timeline fast enough. There was like almost, 8-second violations, whatever. There was also, I mean, the play where Brunson got hurt was one where he was just getting blitzed and probably could have used a Josh Hart in the backcourt to help throw the ball to. But then on top of that, just continually, we're just like, we're going to play their level. We're going to play the Detroit's level and get to the inside and, go up for layups incessantly or whatever, which maybe you can sort of forgive that in a way, because the Knicks just weren't making threes. But after like the 4th time where you go in and realize, oh, everybody's just going to foul everybody in this half and nobody's going to get calls on the inside, you should probably change your strategy and start looking to try to get shooters involved again, because you're better off at least taking the chance on that, like taking a chance on 30% 3-point shooting than you are on 30% 2-point shooting on the inside. So, I think that there was some things to work on for Tibbs in this one, but luckily they had Jalen Brunson with his post-injury Willis Reed moment come back in and just completely dominate the 4th quarter of this game.
A massive win for the Indiana Pacers. They take game 4 in Milwaukee, a huge road win.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast.
Their offense is just a buzzsaw at its best. When they play the way they want, they call it random when they're talking to me. They call it random, in other interview settings. But to them, it's not random. It's concepts they know. It's movement they know. It's passing and screening that they're comfortable with, and they know when it should and shouldn't come, and they can react to situations in front of them and apply the most pressure-filled thing to the game. And that sounds so simple to say, but it's so hard for teams to defend. Ask Joe Mazzulla last year which series was the hardest for the Celtics. He said it on Locked On Celtics. He said it was the Pacers. That was their only sweep, and they said it was their hardest series, because it's so hard to guard the Pacers when they're playing their best offense. In the second half of game 3, they did not. They said it themselves a bunch. They said we were stagnant. The ball was moving around the perimeter. We were not driving enough. We were not flowing. And it was obvious. They scored 18 points in the 3rd quarter. The Bucks ran away with the game. Tonight, they never had a moment. In fact, I would argue through all 4 games, this was their most complete offensive game. Game 1 and 2, there were moments in the 4th quarter where they were a little too jump shoot heavy, settling a little bit, and the Bucks kind of chewed at the lead. And this game, that stretch never really happened. They kept their foot on the gas the whole time. Just a fantastic offensive night. And to me, it wasn't that they didn't adjust from game 3. They clearly did. The rotation, much different, right? Jarris Walker, the first sub of both halves after about 4.5 minutes. Different stretches of who the front court group is, when the bench and who is with the bench at different times. right? They certainly changed things up, but I think they just got back to their style, right? Rick Carlisle told us after the game, he thought in game 3, and by thought, I mean he checked tracking data, I believe, that had their second most isolation possessions of any game the Pacers have played this entire season. They had very few in game 4. The Bucks switching defense gave them no issues, right? They were willing to screen to get Tyrese Haliburton going left. He doesn't want to go left when he's just beating the guy one-on-one. When he has a screen, and he can either reject that screen and go the way he wants and throw a defender off, or he can take the screen and create an advantage and get an opening going the way he doesn't want. Win-win, right? They did that a lot. Miles Turner setting screens, getting Haliburton going left early in the game really set the tone for the Pacers. We'll talk a lot about Miles Turner later in this podcast. I debated opening this episode with him. He was that good. But the Pacers offense was the story, right? Haliburton sees 2, gets it to the open man. That guy scores. Haliburton sees 2, the open man gets the ball. The Bucks rotate, one more pass, open shot. They hit it. And the starters have been doing that for a lot of the series. And to be clear, the starters were tremendous, right? I talked after game 3 about, yes, Haliburton was not good compared to his standards. Turner's worst postseason game maybe the last 2 years. Nembhard was 2 for 8. That's 3 starters that were just not good. Tyrese Haliburton, 6 for 11 in this game. Andrew Nembhard was 8 for 14. Andrew Nembhard had 20 points. I have no idea when he scored 20 points. Like, it was the quietest 20-point game I've ever seen. Ever seen. Like, would anyone rank him as a top 2 or 3 performer for the Pacers in this game? No, and he had 20 points, 2 assists, good defense, 1 turnover, plus 20. He was great. And Miles Turner was 9 for 13 and was the standout in just about every way, which we'll get to again later in this episode. Those 3 recovering made the starters hum. Neesmith's been rock solid all series and was tremendous again. Had the highlight of the game. Pascal Siakam, what he would consider probably for himself a pretty pedestrian game with only 12 points and 4 assists, still made half his shots and had the best probably defensive half anyone's had on Giannis in the series. In the first half, he soaked up a lot of fouls that kind of limited his minutes and changed when he was out there. But all 5 starters for the Pacers shot 50% or better in this game. And it was easy. It was back to game 1 and 2 where it was easy for them to create those shots, right? And it's so boring for me to keep walking away with the same, look how easy offense is for the Pacers. But I'm just not stunned. But, I thought I picked Pacers in 7. That might very well still happen. I don't want to get ahead of myself here. But it has been much easier for them to score in this series than I anticipated. And that happened again in this game. Now, the starters have been good a lot, right? They've been winning. The Pacers have been winning the Giannis minutes in some of these games. In games 1 and 2, they certainly did. But the Bucks have found answers with bench-heavy groups or Giannis plus bench-heavy groups to chew back into these games, right? The Pacers bench has been, let's say, rocky in the postseason so far, with some guys having good nights here but not there, or there but not here, whatever phrasing you want to use. I don't care. They have not been at the level they were at last year. I don't think anyone would even get close to debating that. They were very good today. This was the best Pacers bench game of the season. Some of that is on individual performances. Some of that is on fascinating new but useful lineup combinations. Some of that's just on the play better adjustment, the best one you could possibly make. But like, look, we can bellyache, and we did, about rotations. I think people were missing the boat saying, why is Ben Shepherd playing? Ben Shepherd probably should play. Maybe, the combos is what I talked about being the issue, and they changed those in a meaningful way. Groups with Walker plus Shepherd together were quite good. Toppin was not the first sub, something that Kyle Taylor talked about yesterday, albeit in slightly different context. It was Jarris Walker instead. They changed up who TJ McConnell's playing with in the backcourt sometimes. It just all works. Now, obviously, huge caveat. Benedict Mathurin did not play in this game. That had, to me, little bearing on the bench being much better. A lot of that was the combination specifically, but that is noteworthy when discussing their rotation. But this was the best bench game, right? Jarris Walker, 4 for 5. All of his shots were threes. I mean, his shooting development in the league has just been remarkable. Again, I'll get into more individuals later with specifics, but just Obi Toppin finally made shots. He was 5 for 7. He had some huge run-stopping corner threes. Ben Shepherd did not make shots, but still played over 21 minutes because his point of attack defense is so valuable. Thomas Bryant, my biggest adjustment rotationally after game 3. If you listen to that show with Kyle Taylor, I said he's got to play way less than 21 minutes. He played 7. That's been the Goldilocks number this series for him, is between like 7 and 10, just right. He can contribute in that kind of time. He had some huge boards in this game, right? So they got what they needed from Shepherd and Bryant, and the other 3 were all making shots. And the biggest stretch of the game for the Pacers offensively, and this really showed to me the ease at which they were getting shots in this game, was the middle of the third quarter. The only time in the second half it felt like, oh man, maybe this will not go the Pacers' way again. It got to 9, right? The Pacers led wire to wire. They never trailed in this game. It was only tied at 0-0. It got to 9 in the third quarter. Giannis was finally getting going. He had 8 points at halftime, and then he just started crushing to start this quarter. I think it was like 85-76 or something. 88-76, excuse me. It was an 8-point lead for the Pacers, and Giannis was up to 21. He had 13 points in the third quarter at that time. This is when the bench had their best stretch probably of the entire series. And Toppin had just come into the game. TJ McConnell, they're seeing a zone. He gets to the rim, huge layup. Giannis gets free throws on the other end after a foul from Ryan Rollins. TJ McConnell gets to the rim again for a huge layup. After he smoked 2 in the last game, he had 2 awesome finishes at the basket. Then the next possession, they get Pascal Siakam an open shot set up by Tyrese Halliburton. Then wide open consecutive corner threes for Obi Toppin and Ben Shepherd, one that TJ McConnell set up and one that Tyrese Halliburton set up. So it was really McConnell, Toppin, Shepherd, so 3 bench guys with those two, the 2 stars for the Pacers, Siakam and Halliburton. A new group, a bench heavy group, over half bench group that just stormed in that stretch. They were scoring like crazy. All of a sudden, they're up 13 again, matching punches from the Bucks, right? Giannis kept scoring, Portis kept scoring. So the second Giannis came out of the game, in the start of the fourth quarter, the Pacers' lead was still significant, and they closed the quarter strong too, right? Halliburton got some buckets, Toppin with a huge cutting in transition play to close the frame. All of a sudden, they're up 17 again. That was the best bench stretch of the series, I think, for the Pacers. Their defense wasn't perfect, but it was good enough, and their offense was awesome and against the zone that has crushed those bench groups. McConnell was finishing shots and setting up his teammates. They're flowing right into stuff regardless of the matchups. They weren't matchup hunting, which they have done sometimes when they get into those specific units against that Bucks lineup. They did none of that in this game. And altogether, the bench humming, the starters were awesome. The Pacers got whatever shot they wanted. They cleaned up. They made 50 shots in this game. They shot 60.2% from the field. That's insane. 18 for 39 from deep. The poor Bucks shoot over 40% from deep for the second time this series, and they get outshot from deep. That's actually happened to them twice in this game, in this series. The Pacers, remarkable in this game, how much the Bucks would hit a huge shot and they'd answer with a 3. 36 assists for the Pacers in this game, 25 for the Bucks. Insanely good ball movement, insanely good offensive flow, regardless of who was on the floor, rotation patterns that got lineups with the right balance of shooting and ball handling on the floor. An awesome, awesome offensive night for the Pacers, who just raced past the Bucks. If it didn't get within 8 or 9 in that brief moment in the third quarter, the Pacers would have been up double digits from the middle of the second quarter onward. They were tremendous. And when they get shots like that, even when the game gets tight-ish, 8 or 9 points in the third quarter, I just think they're going to be fine. They're going to get the shots that they like and keep the Bucks away. It happened in game 1, it happened in game 2, and it happened in game 4. And the Pacers are in the driver's seat, 3 chances to move on to the second round.
There's nothing like the energy of a live game, whether it's catching a last-minute Major League Baseball showdown or soaking in the excitement of an NBA playoff game. Finding great seats, though, that used to be a challenge until game time. With last-minute deals, all-in prices, and the lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Plus, ticket prices actually drop as the beginning of the game gets closer, so you can score amazing seats at a great price. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
Was Will Howard the right pick for them? Why didn't they get Shedeur Sanders?
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast.
I want to talk to you, Nick, about the quarterback position, because that might have been the most polarizing thing. I guess quarterback is always the most polarizing thing. When you don't have a franchise quarterback, everyone thinks that somebody's a superstar quarterback in weight. But I just remember seeing Steelers fans being so divided with the first round pick. Well, why did you get this DT? Why didn't you get Shedeur? And then as the draft went further and further, why aren't you getting a quarterback? And this level of panic was that was there. Do you feel like, Nick, in just you evaluate talent, you go over lots of tape, you watch things, across the board. Did you feel like the way that they handled this draft and then picking Will Howard was well done on their part? Or do you think that's just what they settled for, and they mismanaged a few things.
No, I'm completely cool with them kicking and punting on this draft. I mean, we've talked about this before on this very podcast.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think as a talent, Shedeur is clearly better than the rest of the guys. I thought he was better than Dart, and Dart went in the first round. But I just know the tape of Shedeur, right? So there are other factors around Shedeur, obviously. Heard the reports about interviews. I don't know anything about that. I couldn't tell you about it because all I've done is stand at a podium for 5 minutes and listen to Shedeur talk. So I wouldn't know. But I thought Shedeur on tape was solid, but I never thought he was a franchise-changing quarterback. That was the thing, right? He was always a floor raiser, not a ceiling raiser to me. I think the Steelers need to go after a ceiling raiser. And I think when you get a guy like Will Howard, who, in my opinion, could have been drafted in the 4th round, and you could have called that a good pick, it's a good pick. I mean, this guy to me screams, decade-long backup in the NFL. Honestly, reminds me a little bit of Mason Rudolph in a few ways, right? The poise in the pocket. He's a little robotic, which is good and bad at times, just like Mason's a little robotic at times. He gets through his read. I wouldn't call him a super processor, but he's a good player that gets the ball to the right spots. He's accurate. His pressure to sack ratio, I think, is his biggest boon. I mean, this guy steps up in the pocket. He gets the ball out on schedule. If you give him clean pockets, he will win. Even in pressure situations, if he just needs to step up or move around the pocket, he can do it. This guy's a solid player in terms of backup role. And so, man, when you're getting into the 6th round and stuff, I mean, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for a long-term young guy with some backup upside. We've seen the death of the mid-round quarterback really throughout these last 3 or 4 drafts. I mean, Shuck went in the 2nd round, but really, I mean, once you kind of get through that 2nd round to 3rd round range, usually it doesn't happen until late 3rd, early 4th, where those QBs start coming off the board again, which is what we saw happen in this one. I don't think the Steelers messed this up at all. I think Will Howard is a completely fine pick for them. I think some of the guys that went in front of him, certainly he's better than. And so I think this is a completely fine pick. And they punted on this year's quarterback class. It was a bad QB class. We talked about it. Drafting one early, it wouldn't have necessarily been the same as 22, but it would have been very similar. It would have been forcing a pick just to take one, right? To take one, I think, is a bad idea if you don't believe that guy is the franchise quarterback. And I mean, that's what I've talked to, people in the organization, in the league about. Man, you don't just take a quarterback, just take a quarterback. That's what bad franchises do. And so the Steelers showed conviction. They had a long-term plan, and now they're going to stick with it. And so I'm completely fine with what they did here. And they got a great value pick in Will Howard. Again, I agree. The fact that he was there in the 6th round, I think, is kind of crazy to me. To me, this guy should have been drafted about 2 rounds earlier.
No, yeah, I'm right with you on that. I thought he was I thought Will Howard was an optimal choice in the 4th round. To get him in the 6th, great value. Like they figured that out. But I think the thing is that it's for some people, it's less about Will Howard and it's more about Shedeur Sanders. And it's more about Shedeur Sanders not, I guess, with his not being picked. Some people still believe, the truth is that, hey, like he is that guy. He just needs the opportunity. But I do wonder what your assessment is of how Shedeur Sanders handled this draft process, why he's still available, and all the different factors to kind of be aware of in that situation.
Yeah, and I think that's the interesting thing, right? Shedeur is this very you talk about polarization. I mean, is there a prospect that's ever been as polarizing as him? I think the tape shows that he can be, I think, a solid NFL quarterback. We talked about some of his deficiencies. He doesn't have an elite arm. He runs into some pressure, creates his own pressure at times. He's got some things to work on in the lower body mechanics, specifically with his rotation mechanics. But he's a guy that is smart. He's good above the neck. He's very accurate. So there are definitely things to hang your hat on with him. But people are acting to me, and this is the thing about it, is they're acting like this guy is going to win you Super Bowls. And right. Listen, I just don't see that with him. I really do admire Shedeur's confidence in himself. Yeah, I admire the belief he has in himself. I do. I just think in terms of the tape, when you watch it, there are some things there that are concerning for his ceiling at this level. I think for a floor, though, I think he can definitely be, a starting quarterback. I certainly think he can become one of your top 32 quarterbacks in the NFL. He should probably have a starting spot in the league at some point, as long as he can prove himself. And, there's a good shot that 5th round pick ends up being much better than it's going to appear. right now. So I do like Shedeur as a player, but I just think, when people are saying, like, for example, Mel Kiper just going on and
Yeah.
on
Oh
about
my
it.
gosh, that was so ridiculous.
I mean, my goodness. I mean, I feel like, you're acting like you're passing on a franchise-changing player. I just don't view Shedeur in that light.
Same.
I view him as a very solid player, but he is not a franchise changer. And if you are in the AFC, we've talked about this. Look at the quarterbacks the Steelers face in their division. Burrow, Jackson, and then when you go outside of it, Allen, Mahomes, Herbert, Stroud. I mean, so many great players at quarterback in this conference. So it's just really hard for me to buy into the kind of theory that you should get a floor raiser in the AFC. Floor raisers in the AFC don't mean jack. They don't. You need ceiling raisers to go toe for toe, because when it comes down to the playoffs, it's those quarterbacks that make the play. And listen, the Steelers, I understand the quarterback angst. The free agency process has been long and drawn out because Aaron Rodgers hasn't decided yet. You missed on Justin Fields. You missed on Sam Darnold. Russ went elsewhere. Okay, I understand it. You don't really have a clear starter right now. But listen, it's really it feels like somewhat of a transitional year. It does it not? I mean, they are kind of setting this up to be like, hey, 2026 is going to be our swing at quarterback. And this year we're going to find a patchwork solution, where that patchwork solution was a young guy with some upside like Fields or Darnold, or an older vet. It was going to be some type of bridge option. And none of them were going to be franchise changing options. And I think that's what it comes down to. So I think you were going to be whelmed or underwhelmed by most of these options. And that's just the factor of it. And not pushing that button in the draft to kind of push this forward and take you out of the 2026 class is the correct decision. That you could not take one in the first round, because if you did, you're taking yourself out of a class that you view as pretty good. And these scouts do view it as good. And everyone says, the 2026 class, you don't know if it's going to be good. Well, listen, this time last year, they thought this class was going to be bad. 25 class was going to be bad. It ended up being bad. Scouts have a pretty solid idea, generally, of what the quarterback class is going to be a year ahead of time. So I can say with enough confidence that they're probably going to be right about that. It should be a little better in 26.
Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Halo as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. No, seriously, pair a controller or 4 to the Fire TV 4K stick and play your favorite Xbox games anywhere. If you're a hardened gamer and want to have your PlayStation, Nintendo Switch, and Xbox too, then this is for you. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On, all one word, Fire TV Locked On, to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, Fire TV Cube 3rd generation.
Just as everybody drew it up, Shedeur Sanders is a Cleveland Brown.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast.
After drafting Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel in the same draft, still sort of weird and crazy that the Browns drafted 2 quarterbacks, but here we are. It sets the stage for an interesting quarterback competition that features the likes of Joe Flacco, the savvy 41-year-old vet, who's back after the run in 2023, stealing the hearts of Cleveland fans everywhere. Kenny Pickett, once a hated rival, now in the quarterback room, making lots of conflicted feelings for fans who are trying to now cheer for the guy. And he has a legitimate chance, I think, to win this starting job when they open this thing up here in the coming weeks and months. And then 2 rookies, Dylan Gabriel out of Oregon, the shorter stature guy who has some of the best numbers in college football history, 2nd all time in total passing yards as a quarterback. And just steady Eddie guy who's super accurate and was consistent throughout his college career. And similarly, Shedeur Sanders, who's more of the build you look for in a quarterback, but lacks some of the athleticism. Can decision making is very much an elite trait or an elite thing for him, something that the Browns value as well. And similar to Gabriel, as I said, somebody who was consistent, I think, in the way that he played generally, and has a chance to be a superstar, partially because of who he is and his name, if he can develop at the next level and become an even better player. That's your competition. And so what's interesting about this now, I've been saying for a while, the Browns will carry 4 quarterbacks during the offseason. I actually just got in a back and forth with somebody on, I think it was the YouTube comment section. By the way, I am learning since taking over this podcast that the YouTube comment section can be a very, very it's a rabbit hole. Like you get sucked into it and you just keep responding to people and you can't do it for hours and hours. I try to just go in and out when I can. But somebody had commented after my last mock draft on Monday that there's no way the Browns are taking 2 quarterbacks because I had them taking, I think, Tyler Shuck and then or no, Jalen Milroe, I think it was, and then Curtis Rourke later, like in the 6th or 7th round or something. I had him taking Curtis Rourke, like their second to last pick. And somebody was arguing with me in the comments that there's no way they're going to use a pick like that on a rookie quarterback and then waste that player by not having them make the roster and lose the value of like a rookie contract for a guy who was drafted that late. And I said, to me, it represents more bites at the apple, more opportunities to see, hey, can we find a quarterback late? Can one of these guys hit and become something for us? So there are certainly, I thought it was a possibility. I didn't think it would happen this way. I also thought they'd have a lot more picks than what they had. So like to end the draft sort of so abruptly with Friday night, you're drafting Dylan Gabriel. You have one more pick in Dylan Sampson, and then you take another quarterback and you're just done. It felt sort of weird, a weird way to end it all with all the picks they had to start the weekend. But this is where they ended up, and they did take 2 quarterbacks, and I felt like that was possible because you need this team was always going to go into the offseason and embark on this competition with 4 guys in that room because that's what they do. They always have 4 guys in the offseason. Andrew Berry prioritizes that, and then they dwindle it. They cut it down to 3 once the season gets closer and you hit roster cutdown day. That's how I envision this thing playing out. It's exactly how it will play out. But here's the curious question now. You used a 4th round or a 3rd round pick on Dylan Gabriel. That pretty much makes it feel like he's kind of like it was a top 100 pick that you used. He feels like he's probably pretty safe to make this roster because of the nature of where he was taken. You don't want to draft and then quickly move on from a 3rd round pick, especially at that position if you think they can become something. And then Shedeur is being a 5th round pick, maybe a little less security with a 5th round pick. Obviously, 5th, 6th, and 7th round pick guys are guys who are sort of always going to be fighting for a roster spot. So, I'm not going to sit here and say like he's cemented into a spot. But again, it was a draft pick that you used. It was the last draft pick that you used in this draft. Are they really going to cut ties with Shedeur Sanders that quickly? And so that leads me back to like Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett territory where I'm like, okay, which of these guys is the odd man out? Flacco feels like the guy that's supposed to sort of come in, knows the offense, keep this thing afloat, be the bridge option, whereas Kenny sort of feels like the reclamation project. And so all this to say, I don't know that this ends with one of the rookies getting cut. I think they will probably try to invest in these guys as much as they can. If Shedeur has a pretty good like camp and training camp where he does decent, like it would be tough to expose him to the practice squad because I think somebody would scoop him up eventually. Although I don't know, maybe they wouldn't because nobody wanted him through this draft process anyway. And so maybe they wouldn't do that if the Browns tried to go about it that way and put him on the sneak him onto the practice squad. But I still think they would try to keep both these guys on the active roster behind whoever their starter was, or maybe the solution is trading a guy. And that feels like it's what's more likely. It feels like they'll audition all 4 of these guys, get to the end of training camp, and do the same thing they've done basically the last 2 years. Because 2 years ago, you remember, they traded Josh Dobbs right before the roster cutdown day. And they got, I don't think they got a 3rd round pick. I think they got like a 4th or a 5th round pick for Josh Dobbs, something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head. So they got draft capital out of it. I could see him doing the same thing. And maybe that means Kenny Pickett is the odd man out. Maybe they're going to let him audition in the preseason. He's had really good preseasons in the past. And then try to trade him right before the season starts and get some sort of draft capital in return. Or maybe they would do that with one of the rookies, probably more likely Shedeur Sanders, and see if he, puts together some nice tape, does some nice things during that time of year in the summer months, and then can be flipped for something before the season actually begins. I'd be fascinated. I am fascinated, as I'm sure you are as well, to see how this competition sorts itself out. What I would tell you sitting here today, and this is just kind of my early projection. We don't know anything. They haven't even taken the field yet. My early feeling on it would be Flacco probably wins the job to start the year, so he's here. Again, I don't think you're going to move on from Dylan Gabriel after using a 3rd round pick on him. That would be crazy. Unless you're getting a 3rd round pick in return, which I don't know if that's happening either. So it feels like it's going to end up being one of they audition Shedeur and turn him into something that they can flip for a draft pick that's maybe even higher than the draft pick that they used on him, or maybe the same. Or it's Kenny Pickett and he becomes the guy that like you can sell to somebody. Because let's face it, the same reason Kirk Cousins wanted to wait till after the draft and may have to wait a little longer to get a trade done is the same reason that the Browns could potentially get something for somebody like Kenny Pickett at the end of training camp. There's always injuries. Some team's always going to lose a quarterback or a backup quarterback for that matter during training camp, during the preseason. And so that opens the door for a team to get desperate, swing a trade, get somebody in there that can maybe be a starter for you temporarily or for the season. And so the Browns will have some options here. Ultimately, it's a good problem to have. I don't think we need to be like sounding the alarms of like, what are they doing? Who are they going to keep? All these different things. I think it's going to be okay. But yeah, like this opens the door for one of these guys to probably get traded at the end of training camp, which shouldn't surprise anybody because it's what Andrew Berry has tended to do that time of year. Jeffrey Champion in the comments, by the way, says Joe Flacco could lose to Kenny Pickett. I think everybody's too low on Kenny Pickett. That's actually another good point too. I could have this backwards. You know, I'm assuming Joe Flacco because they brought him in here as kind of the veteran of the class and the guy that feels like the bridge. But Kenny could go out there and play really well, and then maybe he earns the job, and then maybe Flacco's the one you're shopping to somebody that needs a veteran backup or just like a steady presence at some point. And that wouldn't be far-fetched either. So I guess at this point, I would probably lean that one of Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco is winning that job. The two rookies have a better chance of being safe because they used picks on them. But if they're going to try to trade one, it might end up being Shedeur Sanders. But ultimately, I think like it would be one of the vets that probably gets shopped to reduce this quarterback room to 3, which is the process they always go through. Have 4 in the offseason and reduce it to 3 before the season starts. And I'm assuming the same thing's going to happen here this year, leading into the 2025 campaign. That is going to be a fascinating group to watch all offseason and leading up to the season. During the season, if they keep it all, if they find a way to keep somebody like Shedeur around, I mean, he's a polarizing player even for a 5th round pick. And so it's going to be all eyes on that competition for obvious reasons, and get ready for some fireworks because, man, it's going to be constant debates during training camp of who had the best day and who's in front now, and between some polarizing players and some fan favorite players, and even some that used to be hated by the fans as well.
There's nothing like the energy of a live game, whether it's catching a last-minute Major League Baseball showdown or soaking in the excitement of an NBA playoff game. Finding great seats, though, that used to be a challenge until Game Time. With last-minute deals, all-in prices, and the lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Plus, ticket prices actually drop as the beginning of the game gets closer, so you can score amazing seats at a great price. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
Leon Draisaitl ain't here, no bell. We're going back to LA tied at 2.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers.
Absolutely bananas Game 4 overtime victory the Oilers pulled off on Sunday night into the wee hours of Monday morning here on the East Coast. And let me just say, wow, that is the type of experience you have as a sports fan that will never let you come back. And what I mean by that, some people, they adopt hobbies, they casually get into things. You know, you watch one Formula One race every few weeks, you watch golf when there's majors on, or tennis when there's majors on, but those don't consume you. Nights like tonight are how you become an obsessive. And that's where we're going to start our show. Just the feelings, the energy, the momentum. Then we're going to pivot to the game itself a little bit more, talk about the mechanics, some of the sequences, some of the key decisions that the Oilers made throughout the course of this game. And then we'll tie a bow on today's show, talking about where we go from here. So to start, again, I've been saying this for a week now. The series started last Monday, and we're recording this into the wee hours of Monday morning. I have not felt great about the Oilers' performances. The John Klingberg experience has been a roller coaster, to say the least. every time he's in a puck battle below his own goal line, I feel like the Kings are about to get a dangerous scoring chance. The Kings are a quality hockey team, and by some virtue of their conservatism and their unwillingness to push for that extra goal, they've allowed the Oilers to kind of get their way back into games, to backdoor their way in and hang around. And I really don't know how the Kings keep falling for this trap. You know, it's kind of like Charlie Brown in the football at this point. If you give the Oilers room and let them start attacking in waves off of the rush, even if they're not fast, eventually they're going to break through. And I saw Elliot Friedman tweet it right at the end of the game. From midway through the second period on, this game entirely changed, and the Oilers dramatically played a better game. I want to get this right. After the second period, the Oilers outshot the Kings, including overtimes, 34-13. And for a good stretch of this game, the Oilers were having a miserable time just registering shots on goal. It was not a dangerous exercise, It was an infuriating exercise. The Oilers had 6 shots on goal in the first, 9 in the second. And then you compare that to the scoring chances. They only registered 6 shots on goal, and they had 23 scoring chances, which means 17 of their scoring chances were blocked or missed the net entirely. And then in the second period, they only registered 9 shots on goal. They were credited with 17 scoring chances. So that's telling you more than half of the scoring chances they generated weren't getting to the net. They weren't being registered as shots on goal. And some of that is a testament to the Kings defense. The Kings are a quality defensive team. They do a good job of clogging shooting lanes. I do feel like the Oilers were getting a little frustrated there in the early stretches of this game when they were trailing. It was 2-0 for a while. The Kings scored in the first period. Fogle scored relatively early on into the second. Then they got on the board with a Corey Perry power play goal, which has been important that the Oilers power play has gotten going here. But this was a helter-skelter kind of game. And at one point, I was thinking to myself, and I wrote it down in my notes, this is your series. If you go down 3-1, even if you pull out Game 5 in LA, and winning in LA is going to be no easy task, and the Oilers are going to need to do that if they would like to win this series. But you need to give yourself a puncher's chance. And the better a chance you give yourself, the more likely you are things to break your way. You know why the Oilers deserve to win this game? Because after that second period, they leaned forward and they locked in. When you go and look at the box scores after this game, you will be astonished. You would see that Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl both played over 30 minutes in this game. 30 minutes from forwards. And then you go and look at the defenseman minute allocation. Bouchard at 35 minutes, Kulak at 29 minutes, Nurse at 27, Klingberg at 26, Wallman at 25, and then Ty Emerson way down at 8:38. Almost shades of Stu Bickle getting 6 minutes in a triple overtime game for the Rangers. I think that was like 12 or 13 years ago now. But the Oilers had to burn the candle at both ends in this game. Because if you go back to LA down 3-1, you didn't defend home ice, you didn't play great, and you did all that work in Game 3. And one of the things I do, which comes from doing conventional journalism, which comes from just covering games, the habit I always had was right before the final period or quarter or half, depending on what sport you're covering, I write my rough outline. I do a headline, a subheading, I do a lead, I pull a few stats, and I start trying to organize my thoughts, because if I'm going to write a column that's on deadline, I like to have it laid out a little bit ahead so I can start to fill in the blanks and color it in as I go along. That way, as the game ends, I have the opportunity, go ask my questions, get my quotes, put it all together. And I can streamline this process. And what I had wrote going into the third period in my notes on my iPad was game 3 the kitchen sink? And I think you saw that from some extent from the Devils in their game 3, where they were down 2-0. They didn't really play well in either of the first 2 games against the Hurricanes, even though they hung around better in the second one. The first one, they kind of just got bullied around. But that's my point here. There was a real possibility that game 3, everything it took going right, you getting that Evander Kane goal, getting the coach's challenge to fail, scoring on the subsequent power play, and then the empty netters, it took a lot going right for the Oilers to win game number 3. And sometimes that's all that is. That's the pop gun, kitchen sink, everything we can do to win just one game to buy ourselves a little bit of breathing room. And then you go out there in game 4, like the Devils did today, and you just don't have it. And you can overachieve your results or your expectations for a game or two when you're outmatched or being outplayed, kind of like the Devils did. But this game, the Oilers were objectively bad for 2 whole periods. They were hanging around because I'll credit where it's due. Calvin Pickard was really good tonight. I give a lot of credit to the Oilers' big guns, and we're going to transition to talking a little bit more about the game itself as opposed to the narratives and kind of the big takeaways in a second in our next segment. But coming away from this game, you got to sit here kind of in awe at the performances you saw from Connor, from Leon, from Evan Bouchard. I'll give a lot of credit to Corey Perry tonight, who was very lively. I think Zach Hyman and Vasily Podkolzin were absolute demons on the forecheck, even though they didn't get a lot of run with the team's best players. But the Oilers found a way. And the one fear I did have in overtime, and we'll wrap up this segment on this note, was the way hockey always goes. It's the team that's getting all of the chances in overtime that gives up the stinker, that loses and feels incredibly deflating. And that's what I was worried about. The entire overtime, I was thinking, this is going too easy. They're going to score. They're not going to do this. They can't do this. And they had a million chances. You think about all of the open nets they missed in the course of this game. You think about Frederick's miss, where the puck was behind Darcy Kemper, who was out of position because it took a wicked bounce off the stanchion. You think about the Leon post, the Hyman jam plays at the net front. The Oilers had so many chances, and it would have been so on the nose for what they've been this year for it to just not go their way.